On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.
According to Meta's calculus, they're going to need 500,000 electricians across the globe in the next 2 years to build the infrastructure required for this AI race.
Hi, I'm Jayson Manship, host of Authentic and Agentic, presented by TechPoint. Every week on this show, we break down what's happening in AI and what it means for how we work, lead, and live. Join me for a human-focused conversation that keeps you ahead of the curve. This is the Authentic and Agentic podcast on the IBJ Media Podcast Network.
Hey folks, Jayson here from Authentic and Agentic. Before we get into today's show, I do want to do a couple shout outs to the sponsors that make this show happen. We have a new one on board, Indiana Wesleyan University, and I'm really grateful for them. As you know, AI is transforming every industry, and Indiana Wesleyan is preparing professionals to lead that change. IWU, as they go by, offers a Master of Science in AI and Data Analytics. They have a graduate certificate in AI Business Innovation, and they have an Applied AI Analytics concentration. And the cool part is these are all designed for working adults. They're flexible, they're online, and they're Christ-centered. They are grounded in biblical ethics. You can discover how IWU can help you find the way forward if you visit indwes.edu. These guys get it. I went to an event with them not long ago they put on called the AI3 Summit or conference in Noblesville. I did a little reporting on it. I was really impressed. These guys are having the hard conversations at this level and preparing graduates for the jobs of tomorrow. So please, please, please go check them out. The other sponsor that's been with us from the beginning, TechPoint, whom you can't get me to say enough nice things about them. I recently read a post that Sally, my good friend Sally over at TechPoint, put up back on March 11th. Sally, sorry it took me so long to read this. She wrote a post called Rebuilding the Experience Ladder in an AI Economy. And that was really interesting to me. Go read it if you get a chance. Techpoint.org. The Index is their news platform. And the post is called Rebuilding the Experience Ladder in an AI Economy. High level, 30-second overview. AI is not eliminating jobs. It's eliminating the entry-level work that used to train people. So as companies rely more on AI for routine tasks, the traditional experience ladder is breaking, and it's creating this gap between needing experience and having a way to get the experience. And she makes the case that the opportunity now is to intentionally rebuild that ladder by designing new ways for people to gain real hands-on experience in an AI-driven world. And it kind of actually reminds me to back to the conversation that the keynote speaker had at the AI3 Summit, where he said, jobs are just constraints, right? And jobs aren't going away. They're just changing because the constraints are changing. And I think that's exactly the case that Sally is making here. Let's rebuild the ladder. Let's design new ways for these new employees, these entry-level people to gain real hands-on experience in this AI-driven world. We're going to kick it to a quick break from TechPoint, and then we'll get into our discussion from my learnings at the Axios Plus DC event this week in Washington, D.C. AI isn't just changing jobs, it's changing who gets hired. TechPoint's new brief, AI amplifies the need to address the experience gap, shows how AI is changing entry-level jobs and how employers can take advantage of this moment. Download the brief and find out ways to get involved at techpoint.org/AI gap. Hey friends, Jayson here with Authentic and Agentic. This week we're doing something a little different. I had a guest scheduled. I rescheduled with Christopher Day, the CEO of Elevate Ventures. He's going to come on next week or the week after because I got invited to a sweet conference discussion in Washington, D.C. News organization out there called Axios invited me to their AI conference. It's basically the who's who in the zoo sitting down and talking about AI. And I couldn't pass up that opportunity. So I flew out to DC on Wednesday of last week. Was there all day, got to talk to some folks and just kind of work through the room. And I got to listen to world leaders really on this topic. And it was super fascinating. I thought it was going to be a lot of kind of demos and discussions around the technology itself. Turns out it ended up being a lot more about the backstory. It was a lot less about how this works, and it was a lot more about who's responsible if this works or this doesn't work. And it felt like, honestly, it was a discussion about consequences, which was pretty interesting and not what I thought I was walking into. So it started with the discussion from the president of Meta, a woman named Dena Powell McCormack. Super intelligent woman, really great at what she does. She got on stage with, I can't remember if it was Mike Allen or Jim Vanderhyde, one of the leaders of Axios. I think it was Mike Allen. And literally 10 minutes before she walked on stage, a jury in LA cited, basically a landmark case out of LA came out where the jury awarded a $6 million payout to a woman who they found Meta and Google, but primarily Meta, liable and negligent for this woman's mental health. Basically, she claimed that the social media tools were addictive and gave her anxiety and depression and mental health issues. And the jury ruled in her favor. And this happened literally right before this woman came on stage. And so a big part of the conversation then turned to who's responsible for this stuff. And I found that to be super interesting because, I mean, there is a widening gap between Silicon Valley optimism and public anxiety. I think that a lot of the people in the tech space are, sprint into the room and go transform humanity and build bigger, better, stronger, faster, cooler, neater stuff. And I think a lot of folks are saying, hold on a second, are we sure this is right? And I think AI feels like the second coming of social media in that way, because social media didn't have a lot of these guardrails. I remember when I was in DC, I've talked about this before, that, they didn't participate. Like the legislators didn't even understand it. They were just like along for the ride, and tech was just moving a million miles an hour. And now we're seeing this play out in some cases, like in local or district courts. So I think this was pretty wild. Like I said, the jury found these groups, Meta and Google, two of the largest companies in the world, liable for being negligent and warning users about platform dangers. I think this could signal much broader wave of youth harm litigation, issues with depression and mental health and all that. I mean, we can all look at that and pretty easily tell you that these things can be problematic. But here's the thing. Is this the moment where the cultural tide turns against some of these organizations, right? They've told us for a long time, trust us, we're trying. They probably are. I mean, I don't know that they are or aren't. I don't have the behind the scenes, but I'd like to hope and think that they are. But think about it this way. There was a time when tobacco companies said, look, we're just making a product that people enjoy, right? Before my time, really, but I know a lot of you have you heard that or remember that. If you watch Mad Men, you certainly do. There was a time that tobacco companies said, we're just making a product people enjoy. Well, eventually, over time, courts and juries started asking a different question, which was, what did you know and how did you design it to have people keep using it? Because they knew nicotine was addicting and they designed it that way, right? Are we in that age of questioning these big tech companies, not just on social media, but on AI? I think that's a really interesting question. And that was kind of the bombshell that entered the room the moment that I got there. That's a lot. I don't know where this is all headed. But I think the fact that you've got tech leaders and government in the same room being led by one of the most prestigious journalistic groups out there in DC talking about this stuff, it was palpable. You could feel the tension. And I think this is going to keep happening. I think you're going to see this case becoming precedent. I think you're going to see Congress want to get more involved now. I think you're going to see organizations pushing against each other. I think this is going to get pretty messy pretty fast. And honestly, I think these are the conversations we have to have, right? Dena Powell suggested that, or Dena McCormack suggested that AI is about the people and the workforce and the infrastructure. She kind of positioned this whole thing as a human-centered goal, right? Their AI lean in, what they're doing is about human-centered. She actually even talked about the whole new workforce. She said that according to Meta's calculus, they're going to need 500,000 electricians across the globe in the next 2 years to build the infrastructure required for this AI race. That's wild, right? If you're not sure what you want to be when you grow up, or you're looking for a new career, based on this feedback, go become an electrician, because apparently in the next couple of years, they are going to be the most sought after, needed thing to accomplish this, with I think makes sense. But as I take a step back and I think about this a little bit more, here's what I'm thinking. I think that these big tech companies, in this case Meta, only because she was in the middle of the stage, right? This is unfair to just say that she's it or Meta is pushing these buttons. I think the big tech, Amazon, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, all these companies are trying to move this whole AI story away from, hey, this is big tech, this is moving fast as big tech, to the national industrial project. They're trying to make it become like a power plant, or nuclear grid upgrades, electricians, permitting data centers. I mean, it stops sounding like software and it starts sounding like the American industrial policy. If you really think back to the telephone systems, right, when they were digging up cables or putting light poles out in front of people's houses to run wires from house to house, all the way down the block, all the way across the street, all the way down the road, all filling out the whole city. People fought that. People didn't want people I don't want you digging up my yard. I don't want you putting a big pole with some hanging lines that are electrical out in front of my house, right? But they did, because it was for the betterment of the community, of the good of the community. And I think that's the conversation that they're trying to play out here with AI. I think that the big tech companies are saying, hey, we need to be doing this stuff to prepare America to be first. And in so doing, we need to be treated like the energy companies or the telecom companies back in the day. And we need to focus on emphasizing infrastructure and workforce and permitting and grid and all these sorts of things. And so that's where I find it super interesting. One of the other speakers was one of the spokespeople from the White House talking about the White House's plan. So Trump rolled out this thing called the National AI Legislative Framework. I think it was March 20th. So we're a week plus out from that. And this is basically their push towards nationalizing an AI kind of framework, right? A legislative approach. So it includes recommendations on child protections, on parental controls, on age assurances to make sure that you're at least some age. It talked about worker and infrastructure priorities. And I think importantly, it's trying to avoid this patchwork of state level rules. And that part, I mean, most of this stuff I can actually agree with. But the state level rules part is important because if you are trying to do this at a state by state level, it becomes impossible to standardize. And so I do think a path where a federal administration says, hey, this is our battle plan, let's go build this, is the right overall push, but there are some hard questions. They've got recommendations on child protections. They talk about giving parents control. How do we build this? How does this look like? Well, this AI plan, this broader AI action plan that the White House put out, is organized around 3 pillars. So it's around accelerating innovation, building AI infrastructure, and leading in international diplomacy and security. And so Washington wants America to win the AI race. Clearly, the big tech companies want to win the AI race. Most of or all of them are based in America. So one can assume they also want to be a part of that conversation. I think the public is starting to say, hey, who's in charge of this race? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Like, let's slow down and think about this a little bit. I'm telling you, like in this room in DC, I felt real tension between the audience, the leaders of the tech companies, the government entities that were there, and even some of the other providers that were kind of tertiary to the event. This showed me that clash up close and personal. I mean, Senator Hawley was there, Josh Hawley was there, and he said something, I got to remember the exact phrasing, but it was something to the effect of, no amount of profit is worth American lives. And if you really think about that for a second, like how hard are we pushing? If Facebook and these companies like them are building big tech and they're building it quickly and we don't really understand it and we don't really know how it all fits together, how can we reasonably allow it to progress, right? How do we get, how do we let them build these tools in such a way that it doesn't accidentally harm folks, right? Play back to the cigarette conversation. There was a time when tobacco companies were just making a product people enjoy. I would like to hope that when it was created and when they first started pushing it, that's really what they were trying to do. Hey, people love these things. It calms people down. It's good. It's neat. It's helpful. Whatever, right? But at some point, someone knew that this product is not good, that this product actually harms people. And they designed it to keep people using it until government came in and regulated it. Just think about that for a second. I'm not trying to draw a direct correlation, but I think that's where my brain goes as I start thinking through some of this stuff. I think that there are big conversations being had in rooms like the one I was in. And I think it's really important that each and every one of us pays attention to these conversations. We need guardrails. We need growth. We need hard conversations. We need checks and balances. I personally don't want anyone having unfettered access to all of this stuff. I don't want anybody being able to pick and choose what to do without having to have some process to get feedback and to, work together with others on it and create some version of approvals process. I don't know, man. I don't know, but this is absolutely wild. And here's the part that maybe pushed it even further for me. They interviewed this guy. His name's Craig Martell. He is the chief technology officer for Lockheed Martin. Before that, he was like the chief something at the Pentagon, CTO at the Pentagon, maybe. But he was, I found to be one of the most interesting guys on stage. This was an all-day event. They had 20 probably people on stage, and I found this guy to be one of the most interesting. So why? First, he had the greatest definition of AI that I've heard yet. So I'm going to use this. You're going to use this over and over again. People ask him all the time, what is AI? Simple, ready? AI is simply statistics at scale. You gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future. That's it. That's what AI is. It gathers all the data so you can understand what it means so that you can use that data to predict the future. You can do that with an email. You feed it text, it spits back something based on what it thinks you might type the next time you do it. You can do that with an image request where it looks at all the images that have been created in the past and it says, oh, this is probably what this person wants in the future. You can do that with code. Hey, here's all the code that we know of, and here's what they want the thing to do. So here's a way to write that code. I found that to be super interesting because it really simplified to me how to communicate this. A lot of people don't really understand it. AI is like this ubiquitous term. It's part of everything. It's in everything. Everybody that does anything with computers nowadays kind of calls it AI, right? I think this is a clear and clean definition. It's statistics at scale. Look at the past, build a model, predict the future. What he did go into, though, was pretty good, which was if the future is different, then sometimes the past doesn't matter. Which I thought was pretty cool. He told this story. So he, again, from the Pentagon turned to Lockheed Martin, which is one of the largest arms dealers isn't the right term. One of the largest national security vendors in the country. So these guys work directly with the U.S. government to help with national security, right, at the highest level. He talked about autonomous Black Hawk helicopters, and he talked about, F-35 pilots having wingmen, which are basically these robots basically that fly next to the fighter pilots that can be their wingmen literally in these missions. And so he talked about all this really high level stuff, which gave me both a ton of fear and a ton of confidence. But it was super cool to hear from. What he said that kind of related it, I think, and this is really concrete. So I want you to really take notes on this one. He talked about a mortar. If you think about a mortar shell, right? You've got a cannon, a barrel, whatever you call it. You drop a mortar in there, you shoot it. It's going to fly across somewhere and it's going to land, right? AI is a lot like that. And what he meant was the more you practice, the more you train, the more you learn, the more concrete you can get with your predictions. So if you fire one shell and it goes over here, then you fire another one and it's off by 5%. Then you fire another one and if it's off by 5%. Once you've fired 1,000 of these things, you have a blast radius, an area in which this thing's going to land. And you can understand the variables that can move it, right? That's literally AI. It's a version of that conversation. It's a much faster, much scaled version of that, where it's looking at all of that data and it's saying, hey, if I push this button, it's probably going to land right in this area. And I just think that's really important. He called this the error envelope, which is something I hadn't heard before. But it's basically a way in which you kind of know where it's going to go. And why I think this is an interesting conversation is because this error envelope, this concept of making mistakes, this concept of moving fast and breaking things, which Silicon Valley is built on, has a potential to reap negative impact, right? Even if we do all the right things and click all the right buttons and have the code coded correctly, if we open up the envelope a little bit, errors can happen, things can get through, problems can happen, people can read it wrong. It can be a human interpretation problem of whatever the tool is telling me, especially if we start to, develop emotional attachment to some of these tools. So I think right now, the policymakers are starting to have arguments around who owns that error envelope. I think creators want to know who bears the risk, and I think defense people are saying, look, responsibility cannot be outsourced to the machine. We have to keep humans involved. I was very encouraged by Craig's perspective that this is all about human machine teaming. It's not just magic, right? AI systems need to be trained. We need to train with them, and and they need to be understood for their limitations so that we can make accountable decisions about how to deploy those things. And so that, I think, is the framework we need to work under. But we need to understand that, there are real consequences out there. And these policymakers and the people owning and building this technology have got to find ways to work together to protect humanity, you and I. And we need to keep pressure on the people that matter here to understand this stuff. I was encouraged. We were two senators, Mark Warner and Josh Hawley, and then there was a member of Congress, Congresswoman Kamek from Florida. And they were all pretty engaged. Obviously they were the ones they invited to the AI conference, so they're probably leaders more in this space, but they really got it. And I was encouraged to hear their perspective, because they're having these when Hawley said, hey, this LA court's talking about Facebook and YouTube, maybe it's time to start having these conversations on Capitol Hill. Maybe we need to bring these people in and have some deeper discussions around responsibility. I think you do. I really think you do. I think we have to figure out how to have hard conversations and put some pressure on the people building to make sure that they're not creating something that can't be managed. When you think about it with that lens of defense attached, you can't accidentally make a mistake with, codes. You can't accidentally make a mistake with weapons. This error envelope concept this guy talked about was pretty on point for me. It gave me a really concrete vision of understanding what we as humans have control over, what AI can help guide and direct, but we have to be the ones pushing the buttons. So another piece that came up, and this is a little bit of a shift of topic, but I thought this was really interesting. There were kind of two versions of the same fight happening amongst the builder side of this equation. So it was neat to hear from the Meta folks and Anthropic and Craig at Lockheed and a bunch of other big kind of leaders in this space having these conversations. But they did have a couple of leaders that are more on the building side that are helping create some of these tools. My favorite, is if you've listened to this podcast, my favorite tool that I use every day is a tool called Replit. And the CEO of Replit was there. And if you don't know Replit, it is a vibe coding tool. You can get to it at replit.com, replit.com. And you can build your own application using this tool. You basically talk to it like you would a chatbot, and it runs off and builds software for you. It's like having a software coder / designer / product person sitting next to you and you telling them, hey, I need you to go build this app for me. And it just runs off and builds the app for you. He said that their goal at Replit is to make coding easier, to make software more accessible. And he used the term open to normies. So folks like you and I who aren't software developers can start building software. It was really, really neat to see. The other group that was discussed, or the other person that was on stage at this that was on the builder side of the equation, is a company called Adobe. Most of you know Adobe. They had someone, Louise Pentland was her name. She's on the IP, I think, and maybe legal or HR side of the equation, but she was talking about how AI is being used to accelerate creativity. So one of the things they're laser focused on is IP protections, but she did talk a lot about the creator economics side of this. Like, how do you help make an economic benefit for creators? Because at the end of the day, that's Adobe's livelihood. The people using Adobe are graphic designers, are photographers, are people that are doing that. And they need to build tools to help empower that. And so they're walking a pretty tight rope right now. The folks I talked to in the creative space are real nervous, worried, frustrated, maybe even pissed off that this AI conversation is happening at the level that it is. And so it was pretty interesting to hear her perspective on that. She was talking about it fitting kind of the broader thesis, their broader thesis of that Adobe's changes. They have a tool called Firefly that they've leaned into that attempts to use their models are used on licensed content and public domain material, but they're trying to become the responsible creativity company, right? In essence, they're trying to say, hey, we're going to only use content that we've licensed or content that's already in the public domain. We're not going to train our models off of your work unless you expressly want us to, in which case we can, and we will use it to better your future work. Again, with the rationale that we are trying to help build a creator economy. We're trying to help make that happen. Replit, let's just pivot back to that for a second. One of the things he talked about was that the Apple Store has blocked their tool from being downloaded. And so Apple basically is saying, hey, or being updated, I should say. It's still on the Apple Store. You just they can't update their app because Apple has said, hey, your tool is allowing people to build stuff, right? Your tool is allowing people to download and execute code that changes your app's functionality, which is true. And Apple's saying this is longstanding rules. You know, we're not targeting vibe coding. We're not targeting you, Replit. We're just making sure that no one has any apps or tools that do that. Well, I mean, that's kind of the point of Replit, right? To give you the power as a person, as a normie, as the guy said, to be able to download your own stuff or make your own stuff. And so I find that super interesting. Like, what a weird conversation. So who is responsible for safety when software creation like this happens, right? If I'm building software, who's responsible for the safety of that software? Is it me, the developer? Is it Replit, the platform? Is it Apple, the distribution gatekeeper? I think Apple's case in this situation is, hey, we don't want any responsibility of this. We're not auditing your code, and we're certainly not going to be responsible for people that do bad things with it, which I think is very reasonable from Apple's perspective. I think Replit is saying, hey, we're just a piece of technology that's trying to empower people to build whatever they want to build, which also is a pretty reasonable response. I mean, I don't know how this plays out, right? When you look at the kind of shared challenges here from companies like Adobe and companies like Replit, I mean, who is responsible for this stuff? I don't think this is about AI being, you know, it's not AI versus artists or even AI versus developers. I think it's about who gets to train the model, who captures the value, who carries the risk. And this comes full circle back to that conversation with Meta at the beginning. They built a piece of software, arguably, to let you connect with your friends and share your life and share your stories and make friends and find people. And think of all of the features and tools that Google and Meta have. Gmail, Instagram, YouTube. All of the bells and whistles and features they have. Many of them are designed to empower you, to give you the tools to build, create, connect, communicate. Some of them are probably built to keep you stuck in their platform. Who decides? Who decides which is okay and which is not? Who decides who carries the risk? Who decides who gets paid and the value out of it? People ask me all the time, should I use the free version of ChatGPT? Well, my answer is always, well, if you think about it this way, Facebook and Instagram, how much do you pay for Facebook? $0. It's $1 trillion company and you pay $0 to use it. That's because you are the product. They are selling your data. That is how this works. I'm okay with that, but I have enough agency and enough understanding to know what that means. Not everyone does. And I think this is the hard conversations that are going to happen with AI and with social media. Social media is the kind of first one into the fire here. They're the ones taking on the risk around the court cases, right? Because it takes a long time for courts to catch up. This technology moves so much faster than the courts can handle. We're just now think about this for a second. We are just now having litigation hit courts saying that social media is bad. Okay. Think about that. AI is already zooming and no one can tell you if it's good or bad. I mean, you can pontificate on all sides of the equation. I can tell you, I know a lot of people that would disagree with Adobe's perspective. I mean, as the biggest tech product on the market, there's a lot of creators I know, ones that have been very vocal to me specifically, who absolutely do not want any sort of AI in their creative workflows. Period, full stop, period, full stop, exclamation point. But here they are. Adobe, the company dealing with this stuff, is saying, hey, we're working on this. And I think their rationale is correct. I mean, if they're trying to help buoy folks in that space, if they're trying to help build a creator economy, I mean, they're positioned to help do that. And sometimes that's not always the case for the creators themselves to kind of see that big picture. But I think it's also reasonable to assume that not everything that a big company does is really for the betterment of its users or of the broader public. Sometimes it's about competitive advantage. Sometimes it's about, winning a war internally amongst other groups. I don't know. I think it's a real thing. And I think that's the big part of this takeaway. So as I look back at this whole thing from DC, legislators out there talking about, hey, we're going to have to start leaning into some of this stuff. Big tech companies like Meta and Anthropic talking about, hey, we're trying. Builder companies like Replit and Adobe saying, we're outlining their own challenges and talking about what they're trying to build, right? Everybody's working at this, but there's not a clear path. And then you do have the federal government that says, hey, we're going to lay the ground rules. We're going to put this all together. And I think that becomes an interesting conversation in and of itself because, man, I don't think I've ever seen anything come out of DC that everyone's just like, yep, that's it. That's the right way. Let's go, right? I just don't see that. And so let me just kind of wrap this all up this way. As I thought about it, I really kind of tried to piece all this stuff back together after hearing these conversations and just working through everything I just shared with you. I call myself an AI optimist. I wore my AI optimist shirt to this thing. I don't think that AI is really going to be defined by its capabilities. I think that the sky is the limit and opportunities are going to keep going as compute power gets bigger and more and gets strong. Look around and you can see how fast this moves. You can create audio podcast conversations in 30 seconds. You can write songs. You can do all, and that is in the top of the first inning, folks. I don't think we're going to have constraints as we understand them. So I don't think AI is going to really be defined by these capabilities. I think it's going to be defined by the consequences. So when you get to the scale these systems are operating at, I think the questions you start to wrestle with in courtrooms and boardrooms and classrooms and in Washington boils down to who is responsible for the outcomes. I don't think the tech companies can build all this stuff without any responsibility. And I hate to kind of beat this dead horse, so to speak, but I am reminiscent of like the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies. Man, you used to be able to smoke cigarettes on an airplane. Think about that for a second. Because it was the cool thing to do. Joe Cool, literally. Right? And now it's almost impossible to smoke anywhere. So who is responsible for the outcomes? Is it the person building it and me, the coder? Is it the technology I built it on, Replit? Is it Apple just for allowing Replit to be on the Apple store so that I had access to it? This technology is moving really fast. But here's the thing. Trust moves very slow. It takes a very long time for us as Americans, probably all humans, to trust. And I believe if we don't close that gap, it's not going to be the technology that slows us down. It's going to be the people. I think people are saying, slow down. You have to earn your way in. And this conversation that I saw in Washington, D.C. play out with legislators, leaders of the biggest tech companies, courtroom cases landing in real time, and the people building the technology to make it all work. These are the conversations people are having. Come back next week and I will have an actual interview for you. We've got a few lined up in the coming weeks. I know I'm talking to Toph Day, Christopher Day, the CEO of Elevate Ventures. We're going to talk about what Elevate is doing in the Indiana investment scene to help grow the pipeline of startups and scale-ups here in Indiana. We're also going to talk about how AI is impacting that and how many of those companies are AI-enabled or AI-featured. I'm also having a sit-down discussion with some leaders across the tech space through the organization that I've talked about many times before called ITIA. ITIA is the organization that helps drive to kind of the tech thought leadership for the state. They are an awesome group doing awesome things. So I'm sitting down with three of those leaders and we're talking about where AI is at the state level and the legislator, what's coming next and kind of what to look forward to there. And then I have a sit down conversation with a good friend of mine, a guy named Adam Brown. Adam is a former executive on the grid side, technically on the electrical grid. And he has since left the big tech companies and is building with AI in a way that will blow your mind. And we're going to sit down and talk about that and talk about how the power grid and all the power related to it is connected to all this. And so that'll be a fun conversation with Adam also. We are lining up guests for weeks, in some cases months out. Unfortunately, we can't record because of how fast AI moves. But we're constantly working on this. And so if you're interested in being a guest, shoot me an email, Jayson, Jayson at GenMoonX, GenMoonX.com. Please go check out our YouTube page. Please please subscribe, and please tell your friends. We'd love to have deeper conversations like this. I think this conversation in DC was eye-opening for me. It really did continue to drill down into the challenges that we're facing and how we're going to get through them. So we'll talk again next week. See you guys.
Hi, I'm Dave Neff, host of Talent Scout. On this show, we shine a light on Indiana's next generation of leaders who are making a difference in business, community, and civic life. These are real conversations about purpose, mentorship, and building a future that matters. Join me as we invest in leadership that lasts. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise@ibj.com to learn more.